What if I told you that China just unlocked an energy source so powerful it could provide 60,000 years of clean, limitless energy, completely transforming how humanity powers the world?
Imagine a world where energy is no longer a scarce resource, where power grids run indefinitely without reliance on fossil fuels, and where the fear of nuclear disasters becomes a thing of the past. It sounds like something out of science fiction, but China is turning this vision into reality with a groundbreaking energy source. No, this is not an exaggeration. They are indeed doing just that. The Americans can't believe what China is building in the desert now. China is tapping into a safer, more abundant and non-weaponizable form of nuclear energy, with the potential to supply clean, limitless energy for an astonishing 60,000 years. So, what is this miracle nuclear energy player? Thorium. And China wants to be the best at harvesting its potential. Stick around, because this is history in the making. Let's start with some context.
China could use rare earths as a countermeasure. Analysts have been telling me that China could potentially restrict the sales to the United States in the name of national security.
Thorium versus traditional nuclear energy. Thorium and uranium/plutonium represent two distinct pathways in nuclear energy production. Thorium-232, the naturally occurring isotope of thorium, is fertile but not fissile, meaning it requires absorption of a neutron to transmute into uranium-233, a fissile material capable of sustaining a nuclear chain reaction. In contrast, uranium-235 is naturally fissile, allowing it to directly undergo fission upon neutron absorption. Plutonium-239, another fissile material, is synthetically produced from uranium-238 in reactors. Thorium is also significantly more abundant in the Earth's crust, with an average concentration of 10.5 parts per million compared to uranium's 3 parts per million, making it a more sustainable fuel source in the long term. Furthermore, thorium-based reactors are projected to generate less long-lived minor actinides than uranium-plutonium reactors, potentially reducing the long-term radiotoxicity and management challenges associated with nuclear waste disposal. Well, let's then use thorium. Simple, right? Well, no. If it were that simple, that's what everyone would be doing. But for now, let's understand why thorium would be a good alternative. One of the most compelling advantages of thorium is its enhanced safety profile. Thorium reactors, especially those designed as molten salt reactors, operate at atmospheric pressure, minimizing the risk of explosive decompression, a major safety concern in traditional uranium-fueled reactors. Additionally, the high operating temperatures of thorium reactors allow for more efficient thermal to electric conversion, improving overall safety and energy efficiency. The abundance of thorium further strengthens its appeal, as it is approximately 3 times more plentiful than uranium. This greater availability ensures a more sustainable and long-term energy solution, reducing dependency on scarce uranium resources. Another critical factor is its proliferation resistance. The uranium-233 produced from thorium-232 is often contaminated with uranium-232, whose decay products emit strong gamma radiation. This high-energy radiation complicates weaponization, making thorium a less attractive option for nuclear arms development, thereby enhancing global security. While nuclear fusion has long been regarded as the ultimate clean energy solution, it remains fraught with technical challenges. Fusion requires extreme temperatures and pressures to sustain a reaction, and despite decades of research, scientists have yet to achieve a net positive energy output. Practical fusion energy production is still considered to be decades away from commercial viability, with no definitive timeline for large-scale deployment. In contrast, thorium-based reactors are much closer to operational readiness. Notably, China has already completed an experimental thorium-powered molten salt reactor in August 2021, marking a significant step toward commercialization. Unlike fusion, which requires revolutionary breakthroughs in plasma confinement and reactor materials, thorium reactors leverage proven nuclear fission principles, making them a more immediate and feasible alternative for clean energy production. But things are not as simple as they appear on the surface. For starters, one of the main technical hurdles is the requirement for an initial fissile material, such as uranium-235 or plutonium-239, to kickstart the thorium fuel cycle. Additionally, handling uranium-233 presents radiological challenges due to the presence of uranium-232 contaminants, which produce hazardous gamma radiation. Economic factors also pose a significant obstacle. Although thorium is more abundant than uranium, its extraction is currently more expensive because it is primarily obtained as a byproduct of rare earth element mining. This affects the overall economic feasibility of thorium-based nuclear energy. Furthermore, the global nuclear infrastructure is predominantly designed for uranium-plutonium-based reactors, meaning a transition to thorium would require substantial modifications or entirely new reactor designs, necessitating significant investment and regulatory adjustments. But China simply does not care, and this is what is driving them forward, not caring about the cost or the challenges. China's first mover advantage. China has taken a decisive lead in thorium-based nuclear energy with the approval and construction of the world's first commercial-scale thorium molten salt reactor, or TMSR, in the Gobi Desert. The experimental TMSR, completed in 2021, has already undergone preliminary testing, and its success has paved the way for the full-scale reactor, expected to be operational by 2029. The planned reactor will generate up to 60 megawatts of thermal power, enough to provide electricity to around 100,000 households, marking an important step in demonstrating thorium's viability as a large-scale energy source. If the project proves successful, China could rapidly expand thorium reactor deployment. This would make it the global leader in next-generation nuclear energy. The United States, in contrast, remains stuck in the early stages of theoretical modeling and feasibility study, despite early research into molten salt reactors in the 1960s. US efforts have been hampered by bureaucratic inertia, regulatory hurdles, and a lack of political urgency. Instead of pursuing full-scale implementation, much of the American research remains confined to academic and laboratory settings, with companies like TerraPower exploring thorium but facing funding and policy roadblocks. The US Department of Energy has acknowledged thorium's potential, but without a clear pathway for commercialization, the country risks falling behind in a race that could define the future of global energy security. While China is building and testing real-world reactors, the US continues to debate feasibility, with no commercial thorium reactor projects currently approved for construction. This widening gap could have long-term implications for energy independence and technological leadership in nuclear innovation. China's thorium reactor initiative is part of a broader nuclear expansion strategy outlined in its 14th five-year plan, which spans from 2021 to 2025. The country is aggressively scaling its nuclear energy capacity, aiming to more than double its current output by 2035. Right now, China operates over 55 nuclear reactors with a total capacity exceeding 55 gigawatts, and more than 20 additional reactors are under construction. The government has also committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2060, making nuclear power, particularly thorium reactors, a critical component of its long-term energy strategy. With the Gobi Desert project serving as a testbed, China is positioning itself as the dominant player in the future of nuclear energy, potentially licensing its technology to other countries and reshaping the global energy market. If China successfully commercializes thorium reactors, it will gain a substantial geopolitical advantage in clean energy leadership. The ability to export this technology to developing nations could help China strengthen its economic and diplomatic influence, particularly in regions seeking alternatives to fossil fuels. Furthermore, Thorium's relative abundance compared to uranium means that nations without significant uranium reserves could benefit from a more secure and sustainable nuclear fuel source. The success of the Gobi Desert Reactor could prompt other nations to accelerate their thorium research efforts, but given China's first-mover advantage, it is likely to remain ahead for the foreseeable future. The global energy landscape is at a turning point, and with Western nations struggling to adapt, China's strategic investments in thorium technology may set the stage for a future. Unlimited energy is key to power projection for China. In fact, so much so that it is perhaps even a bigger priority, in some ways, for the nation than expanding its nuclear arsenal, which they are also doing. Let's take a deeper look at the possible outcomes. China's nuclear expansion, a global power shift. China is executing the most ambitious nuclear energy expansion in history, with plans to build 150 new nuclear reactors over the next 15 years. This aggressive strategy is unmatched by any other nation and represents an unprecedented commitment to nuclear power as a cornerstone of the country's energy policy. This expansion will surpass the total number of reactors currently operating in the United States and European Union combined, with each new plant costing between $6 billion and $8 billion. China is expected to invest over $40 billion in nuclear infrastructure, reinforcing its dominance in the global energy sector. By 2035, China aims to achieve a total nuclear power capacity of 200 gigawatts, a staggering increase from its current capacity of approximately 55 gigawatts. This goal will not only make China the world's largest producer of nuclear energy, but will also position nuclear power as a central pillar of its strategy to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. Compared to other energy sources, nuclear offers a stable and low-carbon alternative, reducing the country's reliance on intermittent renewables like solar and wind. At the current pace of construction, China will add more nuclear capacity in the next decade than the rest of the world combined. The move is also expected to lower the cost of nuclear energy, making it more competitive with fossil fuels and expanding its accessibility to developing nations. The scale of China's nuclear expansion dwarfs efforts in the United States, where progress has been slow. As of 2024, the US operates around 93 nuclear reactors, contributing approximately 95 gigawatts to the national grid. However, many of these reactors are aging, and only a handful of new projects have been approved in recent years. In contrast, China has over 20 nuclear reactors under construction at any given time and is actively rolling out new projects without delays. Similarly, Europe, which has long relied on nuclear power, has struggled to expand its nuclear fleet due to rising construction costs and shifting political priorities. Countries like Germany have phased out nuclear energy altogether, while France, historically a leader in nuclear power, has faced setbacks in building next-generation reactors. This is not happening in a vacuum, of course. The European Union's current strategic priorities emphasize bolstering defense capabilities in response to potential threats from Russia, leading to a projected increase in defense spending to €326 billion by 2024, marking the 10th consecutive year of growth in military investment. This focus on defense is further underscored by initiatives like the Steel Porcupine strategy, aimed at enhancing Ukraine's defenses against potential Russian aggression. In contrast, nuclear energy is not considered a strategic priority within the EU's decarbonization efforts, as highlighted by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who stated that while nuclear can play a role in decarbonization, it does not receive the same level of support as other technologies, such as solar panels and batteries. China has a different vision, though. In 2014, the communist nation's total nuclear capacity stood at roughly 18 gigawatts, but in merely a decade, it has surpassed 55 gigawatts, with dozens of additional reactors either under construction or in advanced planning stages. China has also developed its own next-generation reactor designs, such as the Hualong 1, which offers improved safety features and higher efficiency. By establishing itself as the leading supplier of advanced nuclear technology, China can extend its geopolitical influence through energy diplomacy. The ability to provide reliable, low-carbon energy to other nations will give China leverage in trade negotiations and international partnerships, particularly in regions struggling with energy security. The implications of this nuclear surge extend beyond energy production. By outpacing the West in nuclear innovation and deployment, China is setting the stage for long-term dominance in the clean energy sector. If current trends continue, the next decade could mark a decisive shift in global energy leadership, with China at the forefront of the nuclear revolution. So, what is so special about these fancy new reactors China is toying with? Well, let's understand the technicalities. This way, we'll be better able to appreciate the grandness of such an undertaking. How does a thorium reactor work? A thorium reactor operates on a fundamentally different principle from traditional uranium or plutonium-based nuclear reactors, offering a safer, more efficient, and more sustainable form of nuclear energy. At its core, a thorium reactor relies on thorium-232, a naturally abundant element that, unlike uranium-235 or plutonium-239, is not fissile on its own. Instead, thorium-232 absorbs a neutron and undergoes a series of nuclear transformations to become uranium-233, which is fissile and capable of sustaining a controlled nuclear chain reaction. This process allows thorium reactors to generate continuous energy while maintaining a stable and efficient reaction cycle. Because thorium is 3 to 4 times more abundant in the Earth's crust than uranium, this technology has the potential to provide nearly limitless energy. One of the most revolutionary aspects of thorium reactors is their use of molten salt as both a fuel medium and a coolant. Unlike conventional nuclear reactors that rely on solid fuel rods, a molten salt reactor dissolves thorium into a liquid fluoride or chloride salt, which is heated to approximately 1,400 degrees Celsius. For perspective, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. This liquid state operation enhances thermal efficiency and enables reactors to function at much higher temperatures than traditional light water reactors, which are typically limited to around 300 degrees Celsius. The high operating temperature of thorium reactors allows for more efficient electricity generation and even the potential for direct industrial heat applications, including hydrogen production and desalination. Moreover, molten salt is chemically stable and has a high boiling point, preventing the risks of overheating. Unlike conventional nuclear reactors, which require high-pressure water cooling systems that pose risks of steam explosions and meltdowns, molten salt reactors operate at atmospheric pressure. This eliminates the possibility of catastrophic pressure buildup and reactor vessel rupture, reducing the risk of a Chernobyl or Fukushima-like disaster. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 occurred due to a flawed reactor design and operator errors that led to an uncontrollable power surge, causing a massive steam explosion that ruptured the reactor vessel and released large amounts of radioactive material into the environment. Similarly, the Fukushima Daiichi disaster in 2011 was triggered by a tsunami that disabled the cooling systems, leading to overheating, hydrogen explosions, and a catastrophic core meltdown. Both incidents were exacerbated by the reliance on high-pressure water cooling, which, when compromised, resulted in severe reactor failures. In contrast, thorium-based molten salt reactors operate at atmospheric pressure, eliminating the risk of steam explosions and pressure-induced ruptures. Since the fuel is dissolved in a liquid salt mixture, it cannot melt down in the traditional sense, and in the event of overheating, a passive safety mechanism, such as a freeze plug, can drain the fuel into a containment vessel, safely shutting down the reaction. These inherent safety features make a Fukushima or Chernobyl-like disaster virtually impossible in a thorium reactor. This self-regulating feature makes thorium reactors one of the safest nuclear technologies ever developed. Thorium reactors also offer unmatched efficiency compared to conventional uranium-based reactors. A single ton of thorium can generate as much energy as 200 tons of uranium-235, or an astonishing 3.5 million tons of coal. This extraordinary energy density means that a relatively small amount of thorium can power entire cities for extended periods with minimal fuel replenishment. Furthermore, thorium produces significantly less nuclear waste than uranium reactors. Traditional nuclear reactors generate long-lived radioactive isotopes that require storage for tens of thousands of years, whereas thorium reactors produce waste with a much shorter half-life, reducing storage requirements to only a few hundred years. Additionally, many of the byproducts of thorium reactions, including uranium-233, can be recycled back into the reactor, further enhancing fuel efficiency and reducing waste output. Another crucial advantage of thorium reactors is their non-proliferation benefits. Unlike uranium-235 and plutonium-239, which can be easily weaponized for nuclear bombs, thorium-232 is not directly usable for weapons. Even its primary byproduct, uranium-233, is contaminated with uranium-232, which emits high-energy gamma radiation, making it extremely difficult to handle and weaponize. This built-in safeguard ensures that the widespread adoption of thorium reactors would not contribute to nuclear proliferation risks. Naturally, as advancements in molten salt reactor technology continue, thorium's role in the future energy mix is becoming increasingly viable, positioning it as a game-changing solution for our energy needs. So, what is China's game? Well, before we dive deeper into that, one needs to understand the Chinese mindset, and that is pretty simple. China believes in fighting a war against its former oppressors across all spectrums, including those that aren't even considered forms of warfare, such as building thorium reactors, China's long-term thorium strategy. Not only does China wish to deploy the world's first operational thorium molten salt reactor by 2029, located in the Gobi Desert, but it goes much beyond that.
China is planning to build a nuclear power plant on the edge of the Gobi Desert that would be the first in the world to use molten salt as the fuel carrier and coolant.
This is a proving ground for the feasibility and scalability of thorium-based energy, laying the foundation for a broader rollout of commercial modular reactors throughout the 2030s. These smaller, factory-built reactors will be mass-produced and deployed across China, providing decentralized, low-carbon power to urban centers, industrial zones, and remote regions. This modular approach aligns with China's broader energy diversification strategy, allowing for seamless integration with the country's expanding smart grid infrastructure, which blends nuclear, hydro, wind, and solar power to optimize efficiency and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. One of the most transformative aspects of China's thorium ambitions is the potential application of this technology in global logistics. The Chinese government has already initiated research into thorium-powered container ships, which could revolutionize maritime trade by eliminating the need for conventional fossil fuel-based propulsion. Nuclear-powered vessels have long been limited to military applications, but thorium reactors offer a safer and more practical alternative for commercial shipping. These ships would operate without refueling for decades, reducing costs and emissions while giving China an unprecedented strategic advantage in global trade. By leveraging its shipbuilding expertise and dominance in global freight logistics, China could pioneer a new class of ultra-efficient, thorium-powered cargo vessels that reshape international commerce. China has discovered massive thorium reserves within the Bayan Obo mining complex in Inner Mongolia. This region, already the world's largest source of rare earth elements, has now been confirmed to contain an estimated 1 million tons of thorium. This staggering amount could theoretically power China's energy needs for the next 60,000 years. More remarkably, mining waste from rare earth extraction in Inner Mongolia is now recognized as a valuable secondary source of thorium, with estimates suggesting that the radioactive byproducts currently discarded could contain enough fuel to power US households for a millennium. China's push for energy independence through thorium is also about geopolitical strategy. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, Beijing has committed to constructing at least 150 new nuclear reactors in the next 15 years, aiming to generate 200 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2035. This rapid nuclear buildup is a critical component of China's long-term geopolitical strategy to solidify itself as the dominant player in the global nuclear sector, reducing dependence on fossil fuel imports and outpacing traditional nuclear leaders like the United States, France, and Russia. But it goes much beyond that. In parallel with its investment in thorium and traditional nuclear reactors, Beijing is rapidly expanding its nuclear weapons arsenal. According to the latest Pentagon assessments, China's stockpile of nuclear warheads is expected to reach 1,500 by 2035, more than tripling from its estimated count of 500 warheads in 2023. This expansion signals a strategic shift toward nuclear parity with the United States and Russia. It is important to note that thorium technology cannot be directly weaponized. China is very intentionally pursuing a dual nuclear strategy, which also includes the development of new ballistic missile silos and mobile launch platforms. The combination is as effective as it gets. The nation is securing clean, sustainable civilian energy while simultaneously bolstering its military deterrence capabilities. The former gives it an edge as an energy powerhouse. The latter makes it a force to be feared. The geopolitical impact of China's energy independence. For over a century, the world's major powers have been locked in conflicts over fossil fuels, with wars, economic sanctions, and geopolitical tensions arising from the need to secure oil and natural gas reserves. From the resource-driven wars in the Middle East to Cold War-era struggles over energy security, the global dependence on fossil fuels has shaped international relations and fueled instability. However, China's pursuit of thorium-based nuclear energy has the potential to disrupt this historical pattern. China is on the path to securing a clean, sustainable, and virtually limitless power source that could free the nation from reliance on fossil fuel imports while positioning it as the world's foremost energy superpower. China is essentially building for itself an uninterrupted domestic supply of nuclear fuel for centuries, insulating it from the geopolitical risks that plague nations dependent on imported oil, coal, and natural gas. This energy shield provides China with a level of self-sufficiency that no other major industrialized nation currently possesses, giving Beijing an unparalleled advantage in global energy stability and economic planning, especially in a war situation. China's energy independence through thorium-based nuclear power is poised to play a decisive role in any potential military confrontation, particularly in the event of an invasion of Taiwan. Historically, major wars have been dictated by access to energy supplies, with nations reliant on imported fuel facing immense logistical and strategic vulnerabilities. The US and its allies, including Japan and Australia, would almost certainly attempt to impose an economic and energy blockade on China, cutting off supplies of crude oil and liquefied natural gas, LNG, shipments through key maritime choke points like the Strait of Malacca. Such a strategy has been an effective tool of economic warfare in past conflicts, crippling the ability of a targeted nation to sustain prolonged military operations. However, China's transition toward thorium-based nuclear reactors dramatically reduces this risk, as it enables the country to generate a virtually unlimited supply of electricity and process synthetic fuels domestically, bypassing the need for imported hydrocarbons. This strategic autonomy would allow China to maintain full-scale wartime production without reliance on vulnerable supply chains, ensuring that its industrial and military sectors remain operational regardless of external pressures. China's growing energy security also reinforces its naval and aerospace capabilities, allowing the country to extend its military reach further into the Pacific. A blockade scenario would ordinarily restrict the movement of China's navy by limiting access to refueling stations, but thorium-powered ships, especially nuclear-powered submarines and future nuclear aircraft carriers, could remain at sea indefinitely, giving the Chinese Navy a significant endurance advantage. While the US has long used nuclear propulsion in its aircraft carriers and submarines to project power globally, China's ability to integrate next-generation nuclear energy into its maritime strategy would provide it with the same level of operational flexibility. Furthermore, the development of thorium-powered container ships could ensure that China maintains a steady flow of logistical support across critical sea routes, allowing it to circumvent conventional economic warfare tactics aimed at crippling its trade network. On the nuclear front, China's growing arsenal is another major factor in shifting the balance of power. While the US still holds a numerical advantage, its nuclear forces are stretched across multiple theaters, from Europe to the Indo-Pacific, whereas China can concentrate its arsenal primarily on deterring US intervention in Asia. The DF-41 intercontinental ballistic missile, China's most advanced strategic missile, has a range exceeding 12,000 kilometers and can carry multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, making it capable of striking the United States. These land-based missile forces are complemented by China's growing fleet of Type 096 ballistic missile submarines, which are expected to carry the JL-3 SLBM, extending China's second strike capabilities far beyond its coastal waters. This ensures that even if the US were to target China's land-based nuclear forces in a first strike, Beijing would still retain the ability to launch a devastating counterattack from its submarine fleet. Beyond direct military considerations, energy independence allows China to engage in prolonged economic and cyber warfare without suffering the same levels of internal economic destabilization that energy-dependent nations might face. With its domestic energy sector secured, China can withstand sanctions and trade restrictions for extended periods, enabling it to impose its own retaliatory economic measures, such as cutting off exports of critical rare earth elements, which are essential for Western high-tech industries, military equipment, and clean energy technologies. By securing dominance over both strategic resources and energy production, China gains leverage over the supply chains that power the modern global economy. This is not hypothetical. China can indeed extract a serious amount of thorium and make it all possible. How do we know that? Well, they're kind of already doing it. Rare earth metals and China's resource dominance. China has been strategically building control over rare earth metals for decades. With over 60% of global rare earth production and nearly 90% of the world's processing capacity, China has positioned itself as the gatekeeper of the critical materials that power modern technology, from semiconductors and renewable energy systems to advanced military hardware. Thorium, often found alongside rare earth elements, is an integral part of this equation. As China expands its rare earth extraction and processing operations, it is also securing vast reserves of thorium, which can be harnessed for next-generation nuclear energy. The West, particularly the United States and the European Union, has long recognized the strategic importance of rare earth elements, but has struggled to counterbalance China's dominance. The US has attempted to restart domestic mining operations, and the EU has pushed for supply chain diversification, but both efforts are years behind China's well-established infrastructure. This lag is a fundamental geopolitical disadvantage. A nation that controls rare earth metals and advanced energy solutions controls the backbone of technological advancement. If China successfully integrates thorium into its energy ecosystem, it will gain an even stronger grip over industries that the West relies on, including aerospace, telecommunications, and artificial intelligence. This growing disparity is especially concerning in a military context. The modern battlefield is increasingly defined by electronic warfare, precision-guided missiles, hypersonic weapons, and AI-driven defense systems, all of which rely on rare earth elements. If China restricts access to these materials, or, worse, develops self-sufficient production cycles for its military and civilian infrastructure, the US and its allies could find themselves at a severe technological disadvantage. The ability to produce energy-intensive materials like graphene, high-performance alloys, and superconductors without relying on Western energy supplies would further insulate China's military-industrial complex from external pressure. At its core, this is more than harnessing energy. It is also about China achieving strategic dominance. While the West is mired in political debates, regulatory hurdles, and underfunded initiatives to secure critical resources, China is moving full speed ahead with thorium reactor development and rare earth exploitation. If current trends continue, the balance of power will shift irreversibly in Beijing's favor, leaving the US and the EU increasingly dependent on a rival power for the essential materials and technologies that drive their economies and defense capabilities. The geopolitical consequences of this shift should be deeply concerning for Western policymakers. Beijing would be able to act with far greater geopolitical confidence, whether in Taiwan, the South China Sea, or in economic confrontations with the West. Meanwhile, the EU remains divided on nuclear energy policy, and the US has failed to take decisive steps to counter China's dominance in rare earth metals. China is not just preparing for energy self-sufficiency, it is preparing for global supremacy in critical industries. If the US and its allies do not act swiftly to develop alternative energy strategies, secure independent rare earth supply chains, and invest in advanced nuclear research, they risk falling into a position of irreversible strategic disadvantage. The future will not be determined by who has the most oil. It will be determined by who controls the resources and technology of tomorrow. Right now, China is winning that race. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.